Red Bull team boss Christian Horner has expressed his annoyance with Red Bull's results in the Austrian Grand Prix, highlighting Sergio Perez's accident and tyre degradation as the main issues in the race. However, he's still stated his happiness with Max Verstappen's result today. Very important points today, Horner told Sky Sports before adding, "Congratulations to Ferrari, they had a quicker car through the majority of the race, and Max was coming back at the end." Horner went on to explain the incident with Perez showed its similarities to the incident between Alex Albon and Lewis Hamilton in 2020, and how tyre degradation was a big factor for the Austrian outfit struggling. He started by stating, "Our tyre degradation was higher halfway through the first stint. Ferrari just seemed lighter on the tyres. They had a pace advantage which gives you more strategic advantages." Losing Checo was hugely disappointing though. "I don't think Mercedes likes our cars going around the outside of turn 4, so it was the same because you could see Checo, was ahead there, and it's almost a mirror image of Alex a few years ago. It's a tricky corner, and we have seen so many incidents around the outside." When questioned about why Perez was retired from the race, Horner gave a straightforward answer. "There was so much damage. There was no chance of him scoring points today, so it was important then to save the mileage. It's something we'll bounce back from after France." Sergio Perez pinned the full blame on George Russell for their opening lap collision at the Austrian Grand Prix. Russell started the race from P4 on the grid, a place ahead of Perez, who had cut through the pack during sprint qualifying. The pair went to battle during the first lap of the race, but as history has shown, Mercedes, Red Bull and turn 4 of the Red Bull ring has never been the best of recipes. That rang true again in 2022, as Russell and Perez collided at turn 4. Perez went into the gravel, and although he got going again, he lagged at the back in the heavily damaged Red Bull before retiring from the race. "Nothing I can do. He just turned into me," Russell exclaimed on the radio. "You see it clear, no? With George, I gave him enough room," was Perez's version of events. The steward shared Perez's opinion, handing Russell a 5-second penalty, having judged him to have been wholly responsible for the collision. Speaking to media personnel post-race, Perez stuck with the view that Russell was in the wrong, saying the Brit had failed to control his Mercedes. "Big shame for us what happened today," said Perez, "because clearly it felt from our side that we did everything we possibly could to avoid the incident. It's only lap 1, and it was up to George to really control his car. He couldn't control it clearly, and we ended up making contact when I was clearly ahead." Perez said the drivers had been given clear guidance on leaving room for each other in the corner. "For the standards of George, the level, I'm very surprised at that manoeuvre," he said. After falling into the back of the field, Perez later retired from the race and lost second place in the Drivers' Championship to Charles Leclerc. "It's very disappointing for me," he said. "A very disappointing result for our team because clearly today there was a lot of opportunities. We had too much damage to progress in the race." The stewards determined that car 63, Russell, was wholly at fault for the incident after reviewing video footage of the clash. Car 11, Perez, was passing on the outside at turn 4, was at least fully alongside at the entry of the turn and all the way through the manoeuvre, including at the apex of the corner, and left sufficient room for car 63, which ultimately struck car 11. This was not considered as a first lap incident, as this was a battle between the two cars and was not affected by the pack of cars as can happen during the first lap. Gasly was also ruled to be entirely to blame for his collision with Sebastian Vettel later in the race. He was given the same sanction as Russell, a 5-second time penalty and 2 licence points. The stewards reviewed the video evidence and determined that car 5, Vettel, was at least fully alongside throughout his attempt to pass on the outside of the car 10, Gasly, at turn 4, and gave car 10 sufficient room at the apex. The stewards determined that the collision was wholly the fault of car 10. Gasly is now on a total of 6 penalty points on his licence, while Russell has 3. Perez was not the only driver failing to finish in the frustrating circumstances. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari having suffered an engine blowout as he lined up a pass on Perez's teammate Max Verstappen to take P2. That misfortune of Sainz did let Red Bull off the hook in the constructors, but Perez could not take any consolation from it. "Not at all, to be honest," he said in refusal of the suggestion. "I'm very sorry for Carlos what happened today, but yeah, there. That's not to do with us. Although Red Bull had the edge in the sprint over the race distance, Ferrari were clearly the strongest team at the Red Bull Ring. Asked if Red Bull has work to do, Perez replied, "Yeah, definitely. I think the car this week, it hasn't really been up there." The criticism of George Russell comes after the Brit had been speaking ahead of the Austrian Grand Prix about the need for clarity from a lone race director. George Russell has called for a return to a single race director system in F1, following a heated drivers' briefing in Austria on Friday. Following the huge controversy at the end of the 2021 season regarding decisions made by Michael Massey, the permanent race director, who was subsequently ousted, two men were brought in to share his role. They were Niels Wittich, who began the 2022 campaign in the hot seat, and Eduardo Freitas, the latter having eased into the role more gradually due to his commitments in the World Endurance Championship. But along with other drivers such as Sergio Perez, who incurred a 9-place grid penalty for the Austrian Grand Prix sprint, Russell feels more consistency needs to be applied regarding matters such as track limit breaches. That subject is a particularly sensitive one at the Red Bull Ring, and the way it was tackled by the stewards in practice and qualifying on Friday led to a fiery drivers' meeting, after which Sebastian Vettel received a suspended fine of €25,000 for walking out without permission. Russell clearly feels the rotation of the race directors is a factor in the consistency of how the rules are applied. Asked if he thought the revised policy was proving to be a problem, the Mercedes driver, quoted by motorsport.com, said, "Yes, I agree, we need to stick to one race director. We need to have a bit more consistency with the stewarding. We come to the following event and often the steward at the previous event isn't there, so there's no accountability, no explanations of decisions. We ask questions and it's difficult to get a straightforward answer because almost a bit blame is put onto someone else who isn't there. So it's tricky. Everyone has their own interpretations." Wittich, who has put his own stamp on the race director's job this year, having taken a stricter approach on certain topics, such as a greater enforcement regarding drivers' undergarments, jewellery and piercings from a safety perspective. While conceding it was by no means an easy job for the officials, Russell urged greater consistency in the decision-making. Over the course of the year, a number of drivers have commented on that, said the 24-year-old, a director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association. "I think when you have one race director, things can generally be more consistent." However, a P4 finish for Russell meant it was another positive weekend for Mercedes, as Lewis Hamilton took P3 to secure back-to-back podiums. Lewis Hamilton was delighted to end a difficult Austrian GP with another 2022 podium, praising Mercedes for their work to salvage his weekend and for their car improvements to chip away at rivals. Hamilton had a rollercoaster weekend in Spielberg, starting on a high with a strong qualifying pace but then crashing out in Q3 and only gaining one position to 8th for the sprint. But the 7-time world champion enjoyed a fine race day, making his way up to 4th and then claiming a 3rd podium in a row after Carlos Sainz's engine fire in the Ferrari. Hamilton told Sky Sports F1, "This is a great recovery for us as a team. It's really good points." He added, "I feel really great. I'm so happy today, especially after such a difficult start to the weekend. We were looking so good in qualifying and then I crashed the damn thing. Getting your head back around that, knowing the team works so hard to build a new car for me, that affects everything. It affects our budget and so many people have to build new parts. That's never a great feeling, but to get up there and get great points for the team is just a small token of my appreciation." Mercedes are slowly but surely returning to contention in 2022 following their best weekend of the season at the British Grand Prix, with excellent damage limitation at an Austrian GP track where they normally struggle. Team boss Toto Wolff concurred, "We're slowly getting there. We just need to keep chipping away." F1 2022 heads to France in 2 weeks.